Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Looking for Love in All the Wrong Dust Jackets, a show where three disgruntled harpies talk to you about everything we love in romance, whether that's books, movies, TV shows, whatever we like. My name's Liz.
I'm Danny.
I'm Wiggles.
And welcome to the episode. Today, we are reading Pestilence by Laura Thalassa. But before we get into that, I got to warn you, I got to let the people know that we are crass and unhinged. We're terribly unladylike. And we like to talk about all of the naughty times using all them four-letter words.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So now you know. Wiggs, do you want to tell us about our author?
I sure do. Found in the forest when she was young, Laura Thalassa was raised by fairies, kidnapped by werewolves, and given over to vampires as repayment for a 100-year debt. She's been brought back to life twice, and with a single kiss, she woke her true love from eternal sleep. She now lives happily ever after with her undead prince in a castle in the woods. Or something like that anyway. When not writing, Laura can be found scarfing down guacamole, hoarding chocolate for the apocalypse, or curled up on the couch with a good book. And that's what she lets you know about her. So
I love her for that.
Mm-hmm. But she does have several series. The one we're reading, obviously, is the Four Horsemen series. So it's Pestilence, War, Famine, and then Death. But she's got several other series. Her most popular book on Goodreads is Rhapsodic. There we go. I got it out. But she's also got a new book coming out very soon. Her latest release is Bespelled, and then coming out very soon, July 1st, 2025 is going to be the prequel to that. So check it out. I believe it's called The Curse That Binds. That's Laura Thalassa. Danny, what's this book about?
All right, so this book is about the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, kinda. It's specifically about pestilence. I know that's shocking, given the name. But basically, the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse have come to Earth. They were there for a little while and then disappeared. And then 5 years later, Pestilence came back. He is riding across the Earth on his steed, whom I love. And everybody is getting this fever that gives you kind of boils and everything and are dying off. Well, Sara, our main character, she's a fire lady, and they draw straws to see who is going to try to kill Pestilence when he passes through their area. She draws the burnt straw, essentially, and decides she's going to kill him. So everyone else leaves. She shoots Pestilence when he rides by and then lights him on fire, which was truly graphic for me and a little disturbing. But at least it was for her too. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, okay, done, cool, I'm going to bed. And wakes up his prisoner because Pestilence can't die. Mm-hmm. So then she is taken captive and she's forced to kind of ride with him throughout all these places and everything and watch all these people die. And eventually they kind of get to know each other and feels happen. And it's a weird situation. I wasn't sure how I was going to like how it was going to get to a point where I liked Pestilence. It happened, but I didn't know how it was going to happen.
I think that's one of the things that I love the most about this book is, and it's one of my favorite things if authors can pull it off, is if in the beginning I'm like, how the fuck is this romance ever going to happen? The mystery of it is almost as enticing as the actual romance.
Yeah, because it was there. I mean, he was always like, well, I'm killing everyone. And you were like, how am I going to like this motherfucker?
Yeah. Well, and he does some pretty brutal things to Sara. Yep. But to be fair, she did light him on fire.
See, that was so... I was like, when she was like, I'm going to light him on fire. I'm like, excuse me?
Well, she had to do something so brutal that like balanced all of the brutal things he did.
Yeah. That set me off. I was like, oh God, why? He's still alive and she knows he's still alive and she's going to set him on fire.
Mm-hmm. In his armor, which, you know, that creates a whole other set of problems.
It's like having the spell heat metal in D&D.
I was thinking about was it the ancient Greeks or one, I don't remember, who put you in the bull and then they light the bull on fire?
Oh, yeah.
Metal bull. Sorry, I should
Yes.
clarify that for people who don't know what I'm talking about.
I do think from that point forward, I don't understand her fully, because where's your anger, girl? Like it shows up so late in the book that I'm just like it was easier for her to fall for Pestilence than I think it should have been, because like there were so many moments where I was like, he's justifying you personally being cruel to him as a justification for everything that he's done, and that doesn't make sense. So rebut that, right? Like, where's your argument to that? Of like, yeah, that might be true, but you're literally killing everyone I know and people I don't know, right? And so I did struggle with her quite a bit.
Yeah, Sara has a bleeding heart, and that sometimes is hard for me to connect to for the same reason of like, be angrier.
Same, actually.
Pestilence does give some explanations of like, she's not the first person who's tried this. He's been shot. He's been brutally, quote unquote, murdered or whatever many times, which makes him angry. But of course, in my head, I'm like, what else? You started the killing, bro. You started this.
Yes. Like, I kept like having arguments with him for her in my head. I was just like, what? No, don't let him get away with that. He doesn't get to excuse that with that. You need to tell him this. And it was just like, oh, she's gonna let that one pass, and I was like, okay.
I also had that issue, and arguably of the three of us, I think I'm the most bleeding heart of us, and I was just like, be angrier, sis.
Well, to be fair though, she didn't really have a lot of energy to be anything for the first part of the book.
It's true, but like if to me, if you can find it in yourself to enact that kind of violence in the name of protection, then you have to have deep somewhere inside of you the anger to continue to like not make it easy for him, you know? Like I definitely understand the stance of I'm just gonna go along because I cannot physically fight this. Like it is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not getting drugged behind that fucking horse again, right? But to let him off the hook with his flawed logic is just, it was hard for me to swallow. Like I remember one point where I was just like, you gotta fight more in this moment. I think she's been injured because she kept getting injured. So where in the getting injured line, I'm not sure, but it's like 190 pages in or something like that. She gets taken to this family's home where there are kids, and she keeps screaming like, no, not the children, right? And she wakes up, and he like will not spare the children, and he's like, what, would you rather that they have a slow, painful death because no one's there to care for them? And I'm just like, oh, why are you not fighting back with that? She's like, I understand that logic. I was like, you shouldn't. Like, let's even like assume that these kids are babies. There are going to be people who come back through. They have a fighting chance. Like, I don't agree.
Well, I mean, Pestilence is obviously making arguments that are extremely flawed. But to his point in that, like, if he's going to kill the parents and they're out in the woods or on some, random road, like, nobody's going to show up and save these kids. Like, they will die of hunger and exposure before anybody gets to them.
It's true. On the other hand, like, I guess the strategic part of me that's like, think about the best way around it. It's like, you could put up signals, like you could leave a breadcrumb trail to these kids. It wouldn't be that hard. There are people who are like you who are trying to help. And we know this because she's found these people who have come behind her and Pestilence at this point. So like, who's telling them if everybody's dying, right? Who's passing the message along? There have to be other people who are surviving in this process. Or are coming back through after Pestilence has supposedly gone that path, right? Looking for survivors or looking to help or find more medical supplies to take to the next group, right? I don't know. And I didn't think that she vocalized strong enough what he was doing. Like, anytime it was that or with the elderly couple, I can't think of what their names are, but
Ruth,
like
Rob.
Ron. Yeah.
Ruth and Rob.
There you go. Like, you're saying he should spare them because it's unkind, but you're not telling him why it's unkind. Like, she was never speaking to the harm of everyone witnessing this, and that it's more harmful to witness than it is to die.
Well, I think, yes, that is one of Sarah's flaws, is that she does not know how to rationalize with this angelic or whatever entity, because of course, you know, he's not human. He doesn't understand the compassion or empathy that she does. And so trying to teach him or explain to him, in her mind, he's just almost, he's set on this war path. Eventually we find out it's his divine goal or task. And so, like, I get what you're saying. I understand why you might not like Sara because of that. She's a little too bleeding heart for me, but I don't know. I can understand her like beat down mentality of just going along with it. And the only reason she is the one who fought Pestilence in the very beginning of the book is just because it was a sacrifice for her. It was less about strength of I can go fight him, and more, if I do this, everybody else can get away.
It is the bleeding heart thing. I also think there's something to be said for not realizing that, because when you look at him, you see a full-grown man and everything who's doing all these horrible things. But at the other side of things, he is not human. So there is many things, many facets of our personalities, our understanding, our emotions that he just doesn't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I don't dislike her as a character is the worst part. Like, that's the frustration, is I'm like, I think you're a very intriguing character. I also am angry at you.
I think one of the things that almost never comes up is like Sarah's backstory, because we get little snippets of the timeline. She's 21 or 22 in the story. So 5 years ago, she would have been just coming out of high school, had all these dreams to go to college and study English. She loves Shakespeare and Poe and Byron and all of this stuff, and has to do this hard shift to, you know, deal with a world where electricity starts failing, planes fall from the sky, cars start failing, and everybody's freaking out, wondering when the horsemen are going to come back. So she has a level of an emotional trauma or whatever that makes her seem a lot older than she really is. And she's certainly missing out, I think, on a lot of other intelligent social aspects.
There is definitely social intelligence that you gain in your early to mid 20s that I don't think she had the opportunity to do, because she was, you know, she's doing the bleeding heart wonderful thing of, instead of going to college and doing what she wanted and everything, she decides to become a firefighter because she wants to help people, which takes a very certain person, and I admire that. But
well, it's half that, right? But it's also half her father tells her she can't study literature, and like, what use is that?
Yeah,
you need to do something else. And so there's also complexity there where she's like, am I actually that like good for people, or am I just doing this out of obligation?
You find very quickly that she is actually just that good. Like, in every home that she's had to sit and watch these people die, and there isn't really anything she can do. She is still nursing them, trying to be as as much comfort to them as she can be. Apart from the one where the guy tried to kill her.
Well, even then, she was still like,
she was
with
helping
the rest of the people in that family.
Well, and he's painted as such a horrible character, and like, I think he is probably like a piece of shit, but two things can be true at the same time. The reasons he's painted as a horrible character don't make sense to me, because like, he's defending his family. He's literally like, this guy shows up and people die. This is not, I get the fuck out of here.
No, I don't blame him at all.
Yeah.
Like, there's the like little bit of, oh God, Sara, you know, because Sara is fairly innocent in this situation. There isn't really anything she can do.
But I do also, I do also understand why she's perceived as being a traitor, why there is so strong animosity to her, because I don't know that we wouldn't feel the same way, right? Like, look at how quickly people turn on someone if they find out that like their political view is not in alignment, and that's something where like, yes, people will be harmed by certain political people's choices and things like that, and so you understand that a little bit more. But this has gotta be so visceral, because it isn't a policy threat that will then lead to harm. It's literally he shows up and you're harmed, right?
Well, and the the thing that's so tricky about it, because I've read this book twice now, and there are times when, so they're going along this trek and Sara is being pulled along by Pestilence, and she's the only one who's not getting sick and not dying. And then they show up at these houses and she's just like begging and pleading that there's nobody there already, that it's an empty house. And to your point, you know, there's a moment where I'm like, well, fight back. Tell Pestilence we're not staying here. There are people here. They're already dead.
They are already dead.
Like
Him being near.
Yeah. He just has to be within like a couple of miles. And later we find out it's actually a much further spread than that. But
if he chooses it.
If he chooses to be.
Yeah. I think where she becomes the most compelling is when there are people who've started to link the two of them together, and she's caught in that in between, because she can see the good side of Pestilence. She can see the duty being the motivation and not hatred or
even
spite.
really want.
Yes, but no one else can, and it doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
Well, and so to take a step back, like we see a lot of, we as the like readers, because it's all in Sara's perspective, the book, we also kind of see a lot of conflict in Pestilence. Like he is very quickly switches from like torturing Sara to kind of like trying to take care of her while still harming all of these people and having these extreme reactions to humans and human things. And I think that's one of the things I love about this book is it never becomes cut and dry at any point between like, is Pestilence evil? Like even in the beginning of the book, if you kind of anticipate where it's going to go, knowing that he's not evil, it's constantly like, who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, and it's everybody is bad and everybody is good in a way.
It shows everything's not as cut and dry as everyone thinks it is.
I think I agree with that more. Like I would not say that the framing of this, whether or not the author wants us to like live there in the world she's created, the framing of this is very much the Christian end of days.
Yes.
Right? And so they mention multiple times like all religions are right, all religions are wrong. It's just a little bit of this, yada, 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 whatever. It's the Christian representation of the four horsemen that is most influencing what's happening.
For sure.
And so if you assume that world, the idea is that these people are the people that God couldn't tolerate. His children he's done with, and he's bringing about this apocalypse, and those who he's going to sort the goats from the sheep, that kind of language, right? And so I really just wish she had committed, because the thing is there's no proof in almost anything that we see. Even the people who are like taking on these attack strategies of how to take down Pestilence, there's no real proof that humanity is just bad, right? Like this whole like, oh, they're both sides are bad. No, like they're not, like not in her representation of them, right? She did not bring forth people who were taking advantage of this and were raping and looting and murdering all while this chaos is happening. She didn't represent any of that. And so all we're seeing is good people being taken down by Pestilence, people who want to do the thing that they can do to protect others. And if that means doing an act of violence, they'll do it.
I get what you're saying. I think our perspective is so extremely limited. You know, there's an entire world happening and we're only seeing these select people.
Well, and we don't get to see what's going on in the outer outer world, because it is Sara's view, and with electricity being pretty scarce, she seldom knows what's happening in any of the other cities or anything.
Yeah.
Although they are able to get television broadcasts through some method.
Sometimes, yeah.
But yeah.
It depends on if the house has electricity or not.
Right.
Which and what determines whether a house can maintain their electricity, we don't know.
Yeah.
Like there's an entire world being built here that we are seeing just pieces of. I get what you're saying as far as like what else is happening. I guess I liked the interactions we got because they were trying to push Pestilence in one direction while also allowing Sara to see his multiple facets. The only thing I didn't like is towards the end of the book when we start seeing these more and more attacks on him, and also people who are kind of unsure about, do we attack Sara as well? Those scenes and those moments started to move too fast. Like the pacing was way too fast for me. I was like, we should be sitting in these a lot longer. Like when they got pulled from the horse and she got brought into a church and they were like trying to bury Pestilence outside or whatever. And I'm just like, why is this moving so quickly? Give me more time to absorb like the ramifications of these things.
Right. Let us have the moment to argue whether or not we think what these people are doing is right or wrong.
Yeah.
Kind of like in The Walking Dead, like, are the choices that these various characters have made in the name of survival right or wrong? And she didn't give us a chance to sit in that, like you say.
And I mean, I suppose there's an argument that can be made on the other side that it's meant, especially that scene is meant to show how quickly Sara reacts to like just going back to save him. And her thoughts are not about who are these people, what are they doing, you know, are they right, wrong? It's just get back to him and save him. Which, to be fair to all these people, like obviously I don't know how to kill an immortal, but he can be harmed. He just regenerates. Like, have we not all watched any of the X-Men? How do we deal with Wolverine? How do we deal with like vampires? Like, come on, people.
I was shocked that there was never an attempt where they were like, we're going to cut him up into a bunch of tiny pieces and then we're going to scatter those pieces.
Right.
But I did have the question of, if he is temporarily immobilized, I won't call him dead, right?
Sure.
And you take those little pieces, do those little pieces still admit what he's doing, or does it have to be an intentional disease spread?
Fair question.
That is a fair question.
Or like, I was like, why hasn't somebody like captured him, immobilized him, and then like put him in a bunker deep underground where he can't get out? Yes, he's still there.
Cement, right? Like the mob's got it right sometimes.
And even if Pestilence can, which we find out at the end of the book, push the spread of the disease so far that it covers like, you know, multiple states while he just stands in the middle of it, like you put him out in the ocean, you leave him there, and nobody goes to that coast.
Right.
It's like, this is the dead zone. You don't get to go here.
Everybody go east. Get out of here.
Let's go stick him in Antarctica.
Right. Like,
right. What happens though if you know, global warming keeps happening and like you think you put him in an iceberg, but you didn't.
I just thought, he'll kill the penguins.
No, he won't. None of the animals.
It's true.
Like,
I know. It was a sad thought. And then I got a thought of like pockmarked penguins, and it made me sad in my brain hole. ADHD is wonderful sometimes.
The other thing that I thought was really interesting about his justifications, because she does needle him enough that he finally starts telling her some of his justifications and reasons. And one of them is that human beings attempted to get too close to God and warped nature, as I think kind of the phrasing that he used. And so all of our technology, things like that was the worst. And I was just waiting for her to snap back with, well, we don't have that anymore. But yeah, like I was just surprised that we didn't get some of that. But also, if that's the worst thing, like I really was like, you think you can dig a little deeper? I think we do some other pretty horrific things.
Yeah.
Than live on social media.
Well, my interpretation of it, and maybe hopefully this is something that comes up in later books with the other horsemen. My interpretation of it is Pestilence doesn't even have all the answers. He's just doing his divine purpose that he was like put here to do.
Doing what he's told.
And he doesn't have all of the answers to these things.
I have a theory, having only read one book, and maybe it will be disproven in further books, but I sort of had the second book kind of spoiled, but like I know it's going to follow the same formula, so like, is it though? Anyway, but like death gets involved again, and I'm wondering if death is manipulating this rather than so much God, because we get nothing from God except that supposedly his symbol came through one of those like dog rays
Uh-huh.
down to the earth to tell Pestilence, nay, show mercy. Like that's it. That's the only divine intervention we're getting on any of this.
Well, and the way that Pestilence talks about God is that to me, I'm like, have you even ever met God?
Right.
Like, do you even talk to God? Or did you just wake up and go, oh, these symbols on my chest say go to earth and kill people?
That's the feeling I get, that like he's just been living in stasis until God's like, now's the time. I'm sick of their shit.
Yeah. Though he does say that like anytime there is a plague, that is still him. That this version of him as the horseman is a personification, not like his original state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that every time he describes it, it gets more confusing.
Yes.
I'm like, he's like, I'm not a man, Sara, and she's like, I guess I understand that, but also,
Have you seen yourself?
you're a man.
So this is going a little off track, but it my thought stems from the book. So we get the scene where Sara dies and she interacts with death and she calls him, oh God, what is the Thanatos, and which is the Greek god of death. Mm-hmm. Sorry, y'all, if you didn't know, that wasn't Hades. He just rules the underworld. Mm-hmm. There is a different god of death. But I was reading on ye olde internet that the four horsemen as depicted in the Bible, I guess, I haven't read it in many long times, are not like, they're not given these names of pestilence, war, death, and famine. Mm-hmm. And the way that they're described, you could almost say that Pestilence is physically described as like a Zeus or Thor character. Mm-hmm. War is described as very much a Ares or any of the gods of war character, and so on and so forth. And so I was thinking of that while reading that section, and I'm just like, is she going to play with that a little bit in this? That mm-hmm. these are not. She already said these are not Christian entities, but mm-hmm. where are we going?
I will say it did trigger a little bit of the religious trauma for me. So like caution for you if that is a thing. It wasn't bad, but I had a couple moments where I was like, ooh, that makes me feel uncomfy.
Is it the whole like the left behind thing?
Yeah, a little bit.
And at times, like if you're not good, then everyone else good will be evaporated and you'll be left to fend for yourself bullshit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. I felt that a little bit too. I was like, moving past that.
Yeah. Like I said, it wasn't bad, but it was a thing. So I'm just giving you guys a heads up on that one. Cause I was like, oh, wow, that's a little uncomfy for me. I'm going to go light a candle on my altar. Thank you very much.
I know that all four of the horsemen are going to be like, hello, we are sex gods, right?
Yes.
But for me, until proven otherwise, until I get to the fourth book, death is death from Supernatural. Full stop. Like that's who I see. He is death. And there's no argument for me. There's no like, I might even be like persuaded to imagine him sexy, but like that's death.
I guess I just take the images from the front of the original covers, which you can't get anymore.
Oh, really?
This is a tangent. So Pestilence, which I have here, he's a very sexy man.
He's a very sexy man.
Little brood, little pout.
Yes. They redid the covers, I think, when she got picked up by a different publisher. And you can find Pestilence pretty easily, but you can't find the rest of the books. But I have managed to, I got Pestilence and Famine at our local used bookstore. Oh, nice. I was very happy. And I found War recently online. So I have to find Death, which of course, because it's the last one, it's the most difficult to find. People are selling like all four of these for like $180.
God damn.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Paperback?
Oh yeah. They don't, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
I am definitely frequently reminded how glad I am that I'm not a collector girly.
Oh God, no. I would never be like doing this collector business for these books if I didn't already find the first two for like $8. And I was like, well, I'm already here. I might as well keep going.
Yeah.
I get that because I've definitely been like, I want them to at least be in the same like cover line. Usually, my Bridgerton books drive me nuts.
Yeah, I have one Mercy Thompson book that isn't paperback, and I think I'm gonna have to cave and get the paperback because it drives me nuts because it like they make the hardcover so much bigger for no reason. Like, they're short books. Why is it so big? But who knows? I'm also lazy and cheap. So
It's the cheap that really kills me most of the time.
yeah,
too.
yeah.
But the whole reason I was going to talk about that was because Death is, he has his own cover. So I just imagined that man. And of all of them, he is my least favorite to look at.
Oh, well.
I mean, he's a pretty man, but
He's winged, right?
maybe. I don't remember.
I feel like when she was talking about him in that short section, she talked about wings, but maybe that was me being dumb.
I Angel of Death, they, usually are winged.
Yeah. Like I said, supernatural death. That's it.
Just the old fucking
The
man.
old man, yes. And also, he's got a little something to him.
All right. That's a choice.
You can tell when he was young, he could get it. You can tell.
There are many men that I look at and I'm like, ooh, you were something fierce when you were younger.
Literally, just like go back and watch any movie with any of the actors who are known as these like old guys that are in every movie, and you're like, God damn.
No,
He does have wings on the cover.
the one that kills me is Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Which arguably everybody's always, said that he's attractive, but most of our life he's been a fairly old man. Well, I watch a lot of really old movies, and there is an old Disney movie called Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Oh.
Sean Connery was in his 20s.
Oh.
Ma'am! He is so sexy, and he sings. It's not a musical. It's just him, like, singing in a field, but you're like, damn, sir, how dare you?
See, and I don't have that reaction. When somebody is set in my brain as the way they look, that's the way they stay. So if I were to watch a younger version of Sean Connery, my brain would just like recalculate it to make him look old.
That's
just wouldn't
wild. So like when you watch a Bond film, you're like, nope, that's old Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Just out there doing backflips for no. How do you do that, Sean Connery?
I mean, no, I obviously see him younger, but my brain is just like, you can't be attracted to that. Remember, he's old.
Oh, that's a bummer.
So there's one thing that I keep seeing in the reviews that I read of this book, and people who give it like mid or lesser reviews seem to really get upset that Pestilence is always just called Pestilence throughout the entire book. And I can't disagree with that more. I think giving him a name would have just like, it would have made him too human. And the whole point is that he's not.
I actually kind of agree with you there. Like, I appreciated that he's like, I don't need one. I'm not a man. I'm not human.
Yeah.
I am Pestilence. And eventually he does. They never make it clear on whether or not he is actually now just a man or what is happening there.
My interpretation of it is he just stopped spreading the plague.
Yeah.
Like, he still is who he is because his markings don't go away.
Yeah.
She says that.
So that was a little confusing, but basically when he decided that he wanted to partake in humanity, essentially, is when he does, give himself a name, a very common name.
Victor.
Uh-huh. Which, I mean, Pestilence, the Conqueror, Victor, that.
Yeah. He says that, and I was like, oh, fair enough, you little bastard.
If I were her, I would have tortured him with coming up with names for him. I would have been like, maybe you're Steve. Eugene.
You want to be Edgar?
Yeah, I would have been like, we'll find one for you. Don't worry.
Well, she does name his horse.
Yes.
The most ridiculous name.
Trixie, what's the second half of it?
Trixie Skills?
Trixie Skills. Yeah.
He's like, my steed is male. Yeah, it's still Trixie.
And
Trixie responds to it and stuff.
Well, yeah.
Eventually, Trixie's just like, sure.
I don't know. I don't know if you listened to the audiobook or read the book, and also I don't know if this is something that got changed in editing. But in my version of the book, whenever Pestilence says Trixie, it's spelled Tricky or EY, whereas when Sara says it, it's spelled Trixie, and I find that to be hilarious.
That was present in the Kindle.
Nice.
I listened to the audiobook, so I did not get that delight, but I am happy to know that fact now.
Yes. Because Pestilence does not like that his horse is named Trixie. It's not a noble name.
But still calls him it eventually.
Eventually, yeah.
It's just like, whatever, sure.
I
By the way, every time they shot the damn horse, I was like, I know the horse can't die just like Pestilence can't, but I'm like, the fuck, man, it's a horse. Leave it alone. I was also picturing like a giant black horse with just like the cascading mane. I made Trixie very pretty in my mind.
I thought Trixie was white.
I know, but
Okay.
I still wanted it to be a
Yeah.
giant black horse with the cascading black mane.
Okay.
I do know. I don't remember a lot because, like, I've blocked out a lot of religious programming. But I do know that the horse color and their armor color is important.
Yes. I just pictured Shadowfax. So,
Fair enough.
but like bigger.
Yeah.
He
Like
was like
thicker.
somehow,
Thick.
yes, thicker and
thick
fatter
horse.
in my brain, like a Clydesdale.
Yeah.
Yeah, more
Like
Clydesdale
a white
size.
Clydesdale, like an albino Clydesdale is what I had in my mind, which doesn't make sense, but it's there.
Yeah. That's what I got too.
Well, it
There
had
are
to be a
draft
big
horses
horse
that can
because
be
it's
white.
carrying multiple people, right?
Yes.
A long way.
Trixie doesn't seem to get tired ever.
Yeah, Trixie gives no fucks about anything, honestly.
I had a few moments where I was like, is Trixie actually sentient or is she an extension of like his armor? The extension of his armor.
I don't know. There wasn't enough personality given to Trixie
Right.
Yeah.
to know that.
Mm-hmm.
Pestilence definitely treats the horse like he's just a piece of armor, leaves him out in the rain, in the snow.
He does say he's his favorite possession, which, here's the thing. I'm well aware that technically animals are our possessions
Legally, sure.
legally, but I don't like that phrasing.
I don't either.
No, but I meant that like literally. Is he actually just an extension of the accoutrement Pestilence comes with, or is it actually a sentient like animal in there?
I don't know,
Or
but
what could be an animal? You know what I mean? Like
I don't know. Trixie is still around at the end, though, even after Pestilence melts down his golden armor.
True.
So that's not to say that your theory is not correct. I'm just trying to come up with answers, and I have none.
Which made me go, okay, so you melted down your armor, you made her a wedding ring.
Yes.
Great.
That's a lot.
What
of
happened to the rest of it?
Yeah, that's the question.
Or are they just living off that money now, which is also possible.
I don't know, Danny. I sure don't know.
They seemed like they had electricity, which probably costs a pretty penny.
At the end of the book?
Yeah.
Well, since we kind of talked about the wedding ring part, like Pestilence, let's take a step back. Pestilence's reaction to their relationship is very Old Testament.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Damn.
And I'm surprised
pulled
there
that
weren't
out
some
and I
more
was like-
objections to it personally. Because I would have been like, no. First of all, we're going to have a sit down. I might be your prisoner, but like, bro.
We had sex one time.
Once.
With this-
And I think that should have been more hate fucky, personally. Maybe it needed to happen earlier in order for it to be that way, but I think there needed to be a moment of like, she's not just fucking Pestilence, the guy, sort of human person, not angelic thing. She's also fucking God. Like, she should you know what I mean? Like, it should have been like, yeah, fuck you. I'm ruining your angel, bitch. But that's me. Might be some religious trauma in there.
Maybe.
Maybe
It might
a
be.
smidgen. I think it would have had to have happened earlier in order for to do that, because we don't get a sex scene for quite a long time.
We're like 3/4 the way through the book.
Yeah.
And they finally give in.
She does hold out, and I'll give her that.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair. I mean, she's not really.
She's got a lot of inner turmoil in that.
She's also
situation.
fucked up physically.
Yes.
Like, just never really healing. Just like getting slightly better, and he's like, back on the horse. Let's go.
Which I do appreciate that came up. It wasn't just like we're traveling and you're going to be fine. It's no, like she needs to actually rest.
Yeah.
4 days ain't going to cut it. She needs like time
did some
away
damage.
from this. Yes. But then Pestilence, next day wakes up after enjoying the fruits of her body and goes, we're going to go get married. And I'm just like, what?
He doesn't even say it. He shows up at a church with her on the horse, and she's like, excuse me?
What is happening?
Absolutely not.
No.
Also, Here's my question. Like, let's say a priest agrees to make that union happen, right? Like, okay, in what way is God going to be like, stamp of approval? Like, I don't know, but I think you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
You weren't supposed to pick one of the humans as to keep.
Yeah. You can't just start collecting humans, okay? If you save one, then they'll want to save another one. The whole point is to get rid of them all. I'm tired of this experiment.
Well, that's an interesting thing, though, about the experiment, because if Pestilence does his job correctly, there is no need for war, famine, and death.
Right?
Like,
So
if he doesn't get
anticipation, like, this one's weak sauce. I know he's not going to finish it. It's a little bitch. I made a little bitch. Plague ain't going to do shit. I'm just saying.
So much blaspheming happening.
Smite me, almighty smiter.
oh my gosh.
And then lightning hit, and the podcast was over.
Yeah, that's the concern if that happens.
Oh no.
No. Oh gosh. And so Sara says no to the marriage business, and then Pestilence is kind of a bit of a prude about it. He's all like, "But we shared our bodies. You can't."
I
just
was
go."
in you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now you never will be again. All because you had to open your stupid mouth.
I was inside you. I was like, oh dear. I listened to that part this morning. I was like,
I was constantly, when he would talk romantic, I was like, I wish he wouldn't.
I'm pretty sure that was kind of the point.
Yeah.
But it did take me out of the moment. I was like, buddy, you gotta shut up. He gets
talking.
He gets better.
He does. It's still weird.
Especially, I don't understand. And Sara kind of asked that question to herself during one of their moments. But like, where is this man learning all of his sex tricks? Because
Right. There's a moment where he goes down on her.
yeah.
And she's like, bitch, who have you been talking to? Who have you been plaguing that taught you how to do this? Not in this house.
someone Googled something they're not supposed
There's
to.
no Google.
You don't know if he has some unworldly Google.
I think that he doesn't like the internet. But I could be wrong. But like, she makes a point generally that like he's learning all of this from her,
Yeah.
and what he sees other people doing. And I'm like, did you peep into somebody's house?
You peeping Tom. And you're peeping and killing them at the same time.
Right?
Rude.
Like, they won't be able to do that again in a few days. They'll be covered with boils, and you ruined it, monster.
Oh gosh. Though he is learning, he also learns a lot from Ruth and Rob. I don't think he learned that from them.
No.
But
I hope not.
But I'd like to talk about those two because to me, they're the best part of like the whole book.
It was so touching in the audiobook.
Yeah.
Like when she opens the door, it just sounds, oh, come on in. You're like, what? What is happening? Who's at the door, honey? Oh, it's a horseman.
Oh boy. Yeah. So these two older folks, I don't know if we get their ages, but like 80s is the vibe.
Yeah.
And they've decided they're not going to evacuate with everyone else. And that happens to be the home Pestilence and Sara show up at. And whereas everybody else is obviously scared because like I would be scared too if my murderer just walked in the door.
Yep.
They're just inviting and like, well, welcome to our home.
It's been a good run. You're like, ma'am, you should not be so chill about this.
I do really love though the statement. I can't remember if Ruth or Rob makes it, which is they're talking about, they're going to die. They know that Pestilence is there. They are now going to die. And they're just like, well, it's not so bad to know that we are going to die together.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, my heart.
I'm surprised though, because they say all of their children have grown and they've had children of their own, that there isn't some part of them that's like, but I don't want this to happen to my children.
Yeah.
Like that never really gets brought back up. And I'm sort of like, what?
They kind of, I think, imply it that they are, very much Christian believers and everything, and that they believe that this is what God wants, so they're okay with it. Would not have been my response, but
Right. They also seem to treat Pestilence like he is this just obviously man or servant of God, and he is just doing his divine duty. And also he is maybe not as they treat him almost like a young boy, not a young boy, but like a young man, which is not inaccurate. The way they treat him.
Yes. Except that he says he's lived like essentially eons. So yeah. What I do think is interesting too, though, about all of that is that's the first time you get Pestilence sort of like hesitating. Like he's gonna kill them. Like that's not going back. But he's sort of like, maybe I see why this is weird. Right. and it's sort of implied that if people had just treated Pestilence with kindness, and I'm sort of like, this is kind of gross, I don't like the way this feels. Like, but maybe that's just me. That whole situation, I was just like, I almost wish that he had met people who had accepted that they were done, right, where it wasn't that religious connotation, where they weren't also worshiping him, and it was more of just, you know what, I'm not going to keep moving place to place trying to avoid you. I'm going to spend my days enjoying what I have left, which is clearly limited. I'm just not. And like seeing him react to that, because I think he was sweetened by them being sweet to him. And I think seeing it from the other side of, I've accepted this, still fuck you, but I accept it.
Yeah.
The words that kind of like spring out to me a little bit about their conversation is when he is starting to, like, you know, you can tell he's hesitating and everything. He says it's not a clean death. And they were kind of just like, all right. And that one that hit me. I'm like, oh, you are really upset about that. Like, he's not showing that he's really upset about it. You're really upset about this one.
Well, that is also the first one that at least we get to see where he actually stays to watch them die, because he tells Sara that he doesn't like watching the humans die, that bothers him.
Yes.
But I do get what you're saying. Having the religious, like uber Christian kind of wrapped up in all of that, you know, depending on your religious trauma and stuff, can kind of taint the scene a bit.
You know, I don't even think that. I just think we also needed.
It just would have been an interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Because while I do have religious trauma, that one didn't do it for me. They were sweet, true Christians to me.
Well, and I also liked that when he rebuffed, you know, some of their Christian beliefs, when Pestilence was giving them more details about God and whatever, that their reaction was just, okay, well, all right then. That's the way it is. I do wish we got to hear more of their conversations, because Sara goes to bed and the three of them stay up, and I'm like, what did you guys talk about?
What are you fucking talking about down there? God damn. Yeah. I assume that there are two reasons she chose to do that. Was one, she doesn't want to get into the weeds of like people's religious beliefs, which I get.
Yeah. Fair enough, ma'am.
Right. But also, I'm sure that they would ask questions that would give away plot.
Yeah.
For future things coming. And so
it's also kind of heavily implied that they helped him a bit more with the Sara situation, because it's after that he comes in and basically he thinks she's asleep and he just like professes his undying love to her.
I will say that was one I didn't highlight a lot on this book, but I did highlight this. Amongst my growing list of flaws is cowardice, Pestilence says in the dark. I come to you now like a thief in the night, for I fear you'll never listen to me under the light of day. His voice is whisper soft, and I must confess all the things in my heart. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Yes. Sometimes Pestilence also had really nice words.
He
just
did.
Not during sexy times.
Not during sexy times. No. Yeah. He also did not seem to understand why she was like, maybe we shouldn't be getting busy in these people's house.
Yeah.
He's like, they're dead now. And she's like, worse.
Well, and Ruth and Rob are the ones that they decided to bury. So like there's a massive amount of character growth jammed into that like couple of scenes.
Yeah. And we don't get to see a lot of it. I think the tricky part is because a lot of that has to have happened in the conversation that took place before they fell ill.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't think you could really, like, I don't think this story would have benefited from understanding Pestilence perspective at all. I think the mystery of trying to figure him out was pretty key to the story.
Well, and it is kind of a touchy subject with, you know, as far as religion is concerned, because you don't want to step on anybody's toes, but she also does make a point to say that he's like, everybody's right and everybody's wrong. Like, it's not just the Christian religion necessarily.
Yeah, it's you know, to touch a little bit on what he talks about with God is to kind of just rebuff humanity in general. Like, only humans would put a gender on a, like, almighty powerful being and things like that.
Well, I think the other thing that Pestilence doesn't ever even hint at, and it would be the natural inclination, I think, of most people who have any Abrahamic religious base in their cultural understanding, would be, okay, these people are dying, where are they going? Like, there's generally this kind of like vague conversation of like, what happens after you die, and he's like, you wouldn't be able to understand. But we have such a strong cultural understanding of heaven and hell, right?
Yeah.
And like, are you condemning all these people to like eternal torment? You know, like, that's the other part of it, is like, you're a religious figure, you kind of need to dispel that if it's not true.
Yeah. I'm guessing that's for Death's book.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Or we probably won't know by the end either.
And maybe that too.
Don't worry about it.
I love that Death was like kind of amused by Sara.
Death definitely had this like older brother vibe of, oh, this is my younger brother's like current fascination. All right, you guys can hang out.
He's going through his slutty phase.
Yes.
And by slutty phase, you mean I fucked her once and then wanted to put a ring on it.
Yeah. His
Yeah, well.
slutty phase.
Yeah.
They weren't married at the time, Danny. My God, the scandal.
The second he pulled that out, I was like, oh no. Oh no.
It's so weird because like I feel like if I were to read that plot point on a piece of paper, I'd be like, oh my God, this is so cringy. And reading it is cringy, but it's very intentionally cringy. Like, you're supposed to feel cringy about Pestilence. And I'm just, I love it every time I read it, which has now been twice. So, 2 times, because it's just Sara being like, what the fuck have I done? I have taught Pestilence about sex, but I taught him also nothing about how to deal with it.
I don't know. There's a part of her that's got to be a little bit proud. Like, it took her not that long to corrupt this man.
Oh, God. Well, and it started off with food.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously it just started with her presence, but like the first thing is her being like, do you want to eat this? He's like, no, food is gross.
I also like that his reaction a lot of the time was like, no, you're wrong and I'm right, because I'm from God.
Because
I'm a
pestilence.
Like, I'm impressive and you suck. And but anytime she like made even like remotely a good argument in his mind, he's like, I'm gonna go away and think about this.
Yes. And then he comes back with the whiskey, and like, what? They had been together for maybe a couple weeks at that point, and she already is getting this man to drink whiskey. And I'm just like, you might be physically strong, boy, but you are mentally like all over the place.
Yes.
I really appreciated the whole like, we're going to get married thing, because it seems like something he would do. He doesn't understand.
Yeah.
Like that, it made complete sense for his character to be like, okay, we had sex, we're getting married. And I was like, no, sir.
But it also opened up a lot of questions for me as well. Like, is marriage a thing that happens between Celestials as well? Like, there are more questions that I have now.
Right. And that's what kind of gives way to this like theory of blending like mythology in there as well, because there are plenty of marriages amongst the pantheons,
Yeah.
depending on which one you're talking about. So then it's sort of like, what? Okay. I do also find the conversation of babies really interesting.
Oh God,
and the
the
way
babies.
he brings it up of just like, I'm like in a whole nother world as you're talking, and he's just like rubbing her belly, and she's like, that's a choice. And he's like, what if we have a baby? And she's like, whoa, bro. I thought we already had the chat about the marriage thing. We gotta take it slower. Maybe not. And he's like, well,
I mean, we did have
Unprotected
sex. She's
Yeah.
like, what do you mean?
She's like, you're not human.
Apparently he's got enough right bits.
I mean, I'm just going to say, we've read enough
Yes.
otherworldly romances and alien romances and stuff that it can be done.
well, I love that he's just like, well, I can eat like a human and I can get down like a human. She's like, okay. Well, that's great.
And it is heavily hinted at in the epilogue of the book that they do have children.
Yes, because she went to open the door or something, and she said she had to climb over children's toys to
Yes.
do it.
Yes. However, they could have also just adopted a bunch of like orphans.
That's also true.
Yep.
Yes,
We don't
correct. Maybe they also like playing with children's toys, you know?
I mean, I have several toys that are probably meant for kids, but I enjoy having them around.
You took a really interesting pause after the word toys.
Well, I mean,
and
I
I
have
let you
several
keep
of those
going,
toys,
but it
too,
took
but-
everything in my power to not interrupt.
I have those too, but
How do you think Pestilence would react to those toys, though?
Like sex toys?
Yes.
Oh,
I
man.
thought the innuendo was clear.
I just, really felt the need to say
enunciate it.
Yeah. I have no idea. I was thinking that in my head. I was like, how much does Sara teach him about sex?
Oh, I think she'll teach him a lot.
But she's also 21. And, she's lived in a post-apocalyptic world.
It's true.
So how much does she know in the sense that, or has experienced or anything?
Do many of those toys really even exist anymore?
Maybe not the battery-operated ones, but,
Yeah.
I mean, sex toys, the original sex toys are millennia old.
It's
Broom handles.
Oh, God, Danny.
She's not wrong, though.
Just the imagery is
That's
too
a
much.
historical fact.
I
I'm
know
sorry.
it is. I know it is.
Wait, is that where the witches flying on their
Yes.
broomsticks comes from?
It actually is, yes.
That's nasty. Didn't
You're
realize they
nasty.
were vertical, but I get it now. I get it.
It comes from straddling it. Rubbing.
Yeah, but,
That's not how I would envision you would use that.
Oh, I'm sure they did it the other way too. But
Okay.
put a little oil on it,
I would be afraid of splinters, quite frankly. But
Well, they were much better made at that time.
It's
true. Yeah.
Now. Not like this cheap shit we got. Anyway.
So, I don't know. Pestilence, he seems to be open to new experiences towards the end of the book.
This is just my little headcanon, but I think he'd be into receiving. That's all I'm saying. And,
Yeah. Probably.
in a variety of ways, and we never get to see that. That's all I'm saying.
This is not a spicy book. I mean, there is spice in it, but it is certainly
Yes.
lower on our gauge of things.
Yes, but I felt like it was like an appropriate amount because if
Yeah.
all of a sudden
Yeah.
they were just deep dick fucking constantly, it wouldn't seem like it was appropriate for this book.
Uh-huh.
And Jesus wept.
Oh, no.
Wiggles, you were definitely helping with the little bit of religious trauma I got from this book.
Making fun of religious things is my coping mechanism. So, yeah. I will say, I wanted to pivot us a little bit back to some of the characters they meet at the end, because they have a lot of really condensed pivotal moments that
Yes.
lead to Pestilence making his final choice to say, I'm putting my armor down, right? And I related the most to the character at the end when they're in the hospital. They've been attacked by this group that is, again, trying to kill him and are doing a much better job of it, but still a shitty job. And he takes her to this hospital, and the doctor or nurse, we don't really know, says to him, oh, you really love her? And he says, yes, I do. And she's like, great. Well, then you can know what it's like for the rest of us to watch all of our people die. And I was like, that's the way to go out. Yes, they had a more painful death, which showed that death could have or Pestilence could have at any time made these people's deaths less miserable, which makes him more of a dick.
Yeah.
But also, Like,
It was much more horrific, though.
yeah,
But it was so
but
short.
so quick.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, there
a
was
car
not-
accident's more horrific than drowning, but I would still rather die in an instance in a car accident than fight for my life while drowning.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah. And that was a really interesting scene because like it happens right after this gang shoots Sara and like fucking nails Pestilence up to like a telephone pole and burns him alive.
They crucify him.
Yeah. And in that, I remember like thinking when we were getting to the hospital scene and everybody pretty much dies right away because he kills them off. And I'm like, why didn't you do that with the gang members? Is it just because he had already like because how that scene starts is there's some sort of mine that Trixie hits, and so maybe he's just too injured already, like because his face is half blown off at that point.
But he does, like, we get like this really scattered image of what's happening, right? Because she's in and out, but she remembers him waking her up or bringing her back to consciousness enough that she's seen all of them massacred. Like, he was like hacking at them. He was not like giving them the pestilence treatment. He was like, nah, I'm coming for you with these fists, which are way worse, bro.
I almost wonder in the hospital, so he may have been too injured to do like the, full pestilence situation.
Yeah.
During that scene where they actually shot her, but I think he had recovered a little bit by the time he got her to the hospital, because he does recover fairly quickly. And she mentioned when he was carrying her that like part of his face was already back and everything. I think he lost control.
In the hospital?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It was a temper situation, I think, is what happened, and he lost control there. I think when he gets like super injured like that, because he was unconscious for part of the situation.
Yeah.
I think he can't do that stuff when he's that injured.
Yeah. It was pretty graphic.
It was brutal.
And not only graphic and like seeing the violence, but like everything that built up to it, where this man, these gang people are specifically pulling Sara aside and walking her down the road to, shoot her in her stomach and then leave her writhing on the ground. But even when Pestilence saves her, and there's like, this is the moment that hurts so much, and he's carrying Sara away and he pauses to look at Trixie, who's like pawing at the ground because they also burnt the horse, and he has to just like leave the horse behind. And I'm like, it is so sad.
It is.
The description of like the cart he was pushing, like going over the dead body, like, ugh.
Yeah.
There was a couple of different the one situation that like kind of cracked me up a little bit and also was like weirded me out. It was like the cult leader that comes forward and is like, welcome, we have these sacrifices for you, and it's these women who think that they are just gonna get down with Pestilence, and Pestilence fully fucking knew what he was doing the entire time. He's like, what do I do with them? Just like making the guy super uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I'm also not surprised, right? Like, that makes complete sense that someone would go, yes, this is an evil thing that's enacting this mass devastation and seems to be appeased by one woman. Let's try more?
Yeah.
Like, they've been doing that throughout history. Forever.
Well, and it's clearly like an established cult too, because like he's like, I foretold your coming, and it's like, you are nothing in this.
Yeah.
Well, and also, bitch, everybody kind of knew they were coming because the horseman came once, which according to Pestilence was supposed to be like this big warning sign of get your shit together or we're going to come back and do more. And so it's like, bro, the cultist guy, you are like most cult leaders, just taking advantage of a situation.
Which, bringing it back to the like, hey, surprise, we're here, get your shit together. Some goals would have been good.
Yeah, why didn't you tell people that?
Yeah, and like, what thing did they need to change? Things did they need to change?
Yeah, you could have just shut up and been like, hey, we're going to be back in 5 years. If you don't do this by then, we're killing you all. We would have done it. Maybe.
Nah.
Maybe.
Recent events don't secure that knowledge for me.
Big facts.
But I think it would have been probably more like the movie Don't Look Up, where everybody's like, no, they were bad, so we're not going to listen to them. We're going to do the opposite, and we're going to become even worse, probably. But again, I feel like we are missing that component. How is it possible that we are only coming across mostly well-meaning people? The worst person we get is the guy who shoots her in the stomach, and he's like, by her impression, enjoying it.
Yeah.
But also, like, you're just seeing this person as an enemy, so we don't know. Right?
Well, yeah, because even the guy where we were talking about earlier who tries to shoot Sara, so Pestilence Sara show up at their house, and this guy who, from everything we've seen, does seem to love his family. We have no idea if there's like a controlling or narcissistic aspect to it. It's kind of seems to be hinted at, but
it's slightly hinted at, but at the end of at some point they do also talk about her hearing him in a back room just like breaking down.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it makes you wonder how much of that is for show.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But even that guy, like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get that.
I didn't blame him whatsoever.
You're fucked, your family is fucked, and like you think that this person, because Pestilence at that point had started to be like showing some level of physical affection towards her, is a traitor to the human race or is his consort. And it's like, if you can't kill Pestilence, the next best thing is her.
Yeah. Well, and the other part of it that I don't quite understand is if Pestilence and the rest of the horsemen have been watching and in some capacity interfering with human nature for all this time, why is he so shocked that people are fighting back against him and are trying to kill him? Like, he seems to act like that's a bigger offense than some of the other things that humans have done. And it's like, I guess to you personally, but I don't know why you'd be surprised they would make that choice.
I don't think he's shocked that they're attacking him. I think he gets mad when they attack Sara.
But he does talk about them attacking him previously and it being, this egregious thing. I mean, even the way he treats Sara.
Yeah.
And like, obviously the big thing is when he was burning alive because of her, he tried to ask for mercy and she didn't give it. But it's like, dude, you've been fucking mass killing all of us. Like,
right?
You are the enemy. Nobody's like, hey, what if we go talk to this guy? We're not playing D&D here. We're not going to try to roll a charisma check on this motherfucker.
Right?
Fine, I'll get my old character out and go do it.
If anybody could.
Mossy was a badass bitch that way.
Yeah, it's true. I am interested in reading future books. I don't think I'm going to pick it up right away, but I hope that in the future books there's a lot more expansion on the world.
I do know that they're much bigger. Like Pestilence is the shortest book. So I hope that there's more in the others. I've heard that, and this is everybody's reviews, they could be right or wrong. I've heard that the next book, War, is, while it's still a good book, it's the lesser of all four of them.
Okay.
Famine is the best of all of them, and then Pestilence and Death are kind of on the same like level.
Interesting.
Not the characters, the actual books.
Sure.
Watch, I'm going to be obsessed with Death.
Well, you have to
Aren't
get through
you
the other ones
already?
first.
Aren't you already?
I am not.
Woman who has altar to hell at home.
Okay.
Yes, I understand that I was making a big leap between multiple characters and everything. I was trying to make a funny.
Well, it was funny, but she is also not the goddess of death.
Like I said, I understood what I was saying.
Same way that Hades is the god of the underworld.
Yes, I know.
I mean, you can have both. Why not have
Also,
both?
she's cool because she's kind of zombified on half of her. Wiggles looks like this is new information to her.
I have gone the way of, hey, I was raised Catholic. Now I'm avoiding all religion a little bit.
I mean, fair
So
enough.
I don't know anything about anyone else's religion, and I like it that way. Okay, so when Pestilence does finally find her, because he does this whole thing where he's like, I'm going to now just expedite this shit now that you've been hurt.
Yes.
And this is my vengeance. And she's like, bitch, I never asked you for that. I literally said show them mercy, so you're doing it wrong. And then he holds her hostage for 8 days and finally lets her go without communicating, like, hey, I took it back. It was my bad,
I stopped the plague.
I said no more plaguing.
He said I surrendered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she goes her way and like slowly finds out that this has happened and like starts to reestablish her life. And he shows up with a man bun, which I'm like, Pestilence. There's some things about the American culture you didn't need to take on. Okay.
And she's Canadian.
She is Canadian.
She is Canadian, but man buns feel distinctly American right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so when he comes to find her, he tells her, I missed you so much, he says, between kisses. Love is unendurable when it spoils.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's a good line.
That is a good line.
That's a good line. But then they have this like lovely little life that we see into the future. I can't remember how long it is, but long enough that they've been established and have care of some kids, whether they're their own or other kids, who's to say. And war comes in, and I wonder what you guys think. Is Pestilence gonna fight back against war, or is he gonna just let that happen?
Well,
because now he might have a kid in the game.
That's something that I am really interested to read in the next book, because this is year 10 of the Horseman. So Pestilence comes at year 5, and now year 10 is when war comes. So he has spent 5 years essentially with Sara, raising their kids.
Yes.
And is he just going to let war happen?
Because he seemed like scared, and he said basically, I can't stop my brother.
Yes.
But is he just going to be like, let's go find a bunker? Or is he going to be like, well, we're going to fight back because, like, my kids, my Sara, my Trixie.
My Trixie. I do think War, the book, happens. I know it does not happen in North America. So it might be that he's just, like, hiding out until...
Right?
I don't know.
I also, like... I think the dynamic of War showing up on his doorstep and being like, bruh, you did a shit job of this. Watch me take over. It's interesting, and I'd like to read it.
Bro, and he's like, my Sara, my Trixie,
my Sara, my Trixie.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that ending where Sara leaves him behind. The only thing I want to say about it is I just really liked the fact that instead of Pestilence and having this big moment where Sara dies, she does die, and then he goes, okay, I'll do whatever you want. It's like the exact opposite, and they have this big kind of separation. I don't know. I think the thing I liked a lot about this plot is a lot of romance novels go to the left, and this one often went to the right. And I was like, oh, look, surprises.
I also really liked that he tells her, you can go wherever you want, but do not expect to be able to die at my hand.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, chills.
Well, and that she's gone long enough that she makes her way home, which probably takes quite a while because, like, transportation is difficult.
Well, they were down in the United States by that point.
I think
they had to have been in, like, California because
they hadn't gotten that far. I think they were still in Washington State, but his spread had gotten all the way down to Los Angeles, and
on foot, that's not an easy trek.
No.
Like, that's gonna take you a long time.
Well, because I don't know where she is from, but I know she's further than Toronto, so she would have to walk from Seattle to Toronto and then to wherever her home is.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
and she makes it home and everything, and like everyone thought she was dead.
Yeah.
And she had to, like, get her apartment back and everything. So she was gone long enough that they had to have been at least a month or two apart.
Right.
If not more.
And Pestilence is just watching her the whole time.
Just creeping.
Just
like
going behind.
Well, to be fair, I can understand his thought process of, I want to make sure you get home okay.
Right.
But then she's home and it's like, what are you doing, bro? Are you just like contemplating? Are you having an existential crisis now? Like, what's happening?
I mean, this probably is his equivalent of a midlife crisis. Yeah.
It explains the man bun.
Yeah.
It all comes back around.
You know, some guys can pull it off.
They
I
can.
shouldn't shit on it as a hairstyle overall, but some guys, I wish you wouldn't. I wish you wouldn't. And I have a feeling Pestilence would be one of them guys.
I don't know. His face looks very man bun appropriate.
As she holds the book up to us.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, I think it might be ratings time.
Let's start with spies, because that's what we always start with.
I give it like a 2.5. It was not like super spicy, but I honestly wouldn't have liked that in this particular book. I felt like the spice that was given to us was an appropriate amount and well written.
Yeah, she definitely moves quickly through the sex scenes. The author does, but I'll agree with the 2.5.
Yeah.
I'd also say a 2.5. I liked the way that they were described and the fact that even though sometimes like it was harder to get into as a reader, the like hesitancy and sometimes like distrust that was happening in the early ones really felt appropriately written.
Yes.
So,
which means gavel gavel. Yay.
Yay.
What would your romance rating be?
I think I'm going to stick with a 2.5 on that one as well.
Same.
Really?
Because like he has his romantic moments, but even at the end, I would still think he has a lot of growing in that relationship to give, even if he wants to call it making love and he loves her and like
that made me cringe so hard.
Yeah, I was like, ugh. I know
fucking.
you don't know why it's not great, but like, ugh. But I don't know that their relationship is this like still at a solid point yet. Like I think there's still more to go that we don't see.
Oh, for sure there's more to go. I mean, they've only really known each other for a couple of months.
Right.
Very, very traumatic couple of months, but
But I don't think they know what like their relationship. You can have love for somebody and it's not like really romantic because it's all been like trauma bonding at a lot of it.
You can have love for somebody without being in love with somebody.
Yeah.
I love
so
that.
that's why 2.5 for me.
I have love for you bitches, but I'm not in love with you.
Well,
Not yet, but I've been going for the slow burn.
I've got news for you, honey.
Mine's gonna be changed.
One, no. One, I'm straight. Two, I'm aromantic.
Mine's gonna be changed.
anyway, I will be honest with you. When I originally read this book, I rated the romance at 3.5, and I don't think I'm going to change from that. I think it's a very different type of romance than what we read. It's not like Abby Jimenez. Like it's not that. It's the romance is what completely like changes Pestilence. And I think that because it has such a big reaction or outcome that I give it a 3.5.
I think those are good reasons.
Okay, cool. Danny, did you give yours?
I think you just agreed with me.
Yeah, I was agreeing with you with the 2.5.
Okay. Overall rating.
I give this a solid 4. Like, I really liked it. There were some moments where the dialogue was kind of hard to get into. And some of that is because Pestilence is an awkward, weird boy.
Yeah.
But also,
Aren't we all?
Some of it I just didn't enjoy reading. But other than that, I thought it was a really interesting read. It was a nice change of pace. And I really liked it. I want more world building. So I think in the future ones, like that, if the world building it doesn't expand, say when I get to war, I don't think it will be able to maintain that 4. You know?
On Goodreads, I gave it a 3. It was a 3.5 for me. I think that it would have been a 4 had it not triggered a little bit of the for me in religious trauma. That's a total me thing. That's not anything against the book. I really enjoyed the book, and it was a really interesting perspective and a really interesting story to go with, and I enjoyed it.
So I originally read this in like 2 days. I reread it for the podcast in 1 day, and I even in the second read, I still loved it. I know like taking like some of my own hype out of it. The book is probably like a 4.25 or a 4.5, but like for me, the way I just ate it up, it has all the things that I love. It's a straight 5 for me. I know it has a lot of problems. Some of the writing could be cleaned up, and we are missing some good world building. It probably needs like another 100 pages, but I just loved it. And so I'm going to stick with my 5.
I think that's a good choice
Yeah,
because
that's a good
sometimes you just love things and that
Yeah.
it is what it is. And you're like, flaws? Never heard of her.
That I've had books where I'm like, yeah, there were probably some flaws in it, but I fucking loved it, so it's a 5 for me.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's also one of those things where, like, if it has the right, I guess, trope, I can get past a lot of things. And one of my favorites is the kind of like enemies to lovers, but like that slow burn, like really drawing out, like, how are these characters ever going to get to the point where they like each other? And so it did that. And so it made me happy.
And when you rate on vibes.
Yes, we do write in vibes.
So
These are our ratings, motherfuckers. Anyway.
So that brings us to recommendations.
Well, I'm going with Quicksilver. Honestly. We did a podcast episode on it actually not too long ago, and it had that like enemies to lovers vibe, the little bit of the like not understanding each other's points of view a little bit, and I kind of liked that. There was a lot more world building in Quicksilver, but there kind of had to be because it's not set in what is essentially our world.
So I'm going to recommend Tempting Owzed of the the Victoria Aveline series, which is like, I think, book number 4 in that series, as I will talk about in our wrapped up episode, which is coming up next. I've read way too many of them.
I was going to say, how far did you get?
Too far. So like you have to get there, but like they are, other than like knowing what other people have gone through, they could be standalone.
Sure.
But there's a lot of that misunderstanding of what each other's normal is, and a lot of like following a big lug around that has special powers. And I don't really tend to read that stuff otherwise, so this is the best I can give you. Because I went down a rabbit hole with this series. So
You are much more of a contemporary bitch than we are.
I usually am, yes. And, all of these are available on Spotify. And there's one male narrator who does them all. And so it's very addicting. So I guess check that out. It's not the strongest recommendation, but it's what I've got.
Fair enough.
Well, I will recommend a book that I recommend many times that I've made both of you read and only one of you liked. But I will recommend A Soul to Keep by Opal Rain because
Good recommendation.
it is technically also post-apocalyptic. It's just the apocalypse happened a couple centuries ago, so it feels like it's more of a fantasy novel. And the main character, our demon boy, Orpheus, kidnaps, I don't know, it's a Beauty and the Beast thing, right? So like he takes Rhea and they have to kind of do a lot of the shit that Pestilence and Sara do, where she tries to escape, he brings her back, there's a whole like threat to her life thing. So yeah. And then, not to repeat myself, because I recommend that book pretty frequently, I will also recommend Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. It is technically YA, I think. It does have one sex scene in it. I don't really know how they determine sometimes what's YA. But it is a story of a woman who is a witch, but she is hiding and living in this city. There's also a lot of like religious overtones in this one because there are witch hunters who are all, a part of the church and God and priests and stuff. And she ends up having to marry one of the witch hunters because he just thinks she's a thief, but then he finds out she's a witch.
Dun, dun, dun.
So there you go. All right, folks, that brings us to the end of the episode. If you like this episode, you can find us out there on the socials at Wrong Dust Jackets, primarily on TikTok, if that's still around, who's to say, and Instagram. You can also find us out there on our website, wrongdustjackets.com, where you can find a list of episodes we've done, ones we have coming up, blog posts, which I have updated recently.
Woo!
Including actually one for Pestilence, because I didn't realize I hadn't posted that from several months ago. And we would love it so much if you give us 5 stars, like, comment, whatever is available to you on your podcast listening app. Thanks all. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.